So for Mark322, I believe that the in-class discussion aspect of this assignment I did quite well. I feel like I answered the questions as they were asked, and I felt maybe, if anything, I probably went I said a bit too much on the topic and got a bit carried away. But I think I showed my knowledge of the articles that we read and the certain readings that we had to have for week 7. But in terms of the written assessment, I feel that I had a strong introduction. I felt like I started strong with that, with the definition and talking about the acid 3 test and how the actual conceived, communicated, ideal and desired identities were kind of under the umbrella of the corporate covenant. And I discussed one of the articles by Janine Jordan about trust and trustworthiness. In the second part of my assessment, which I labelled Telstra's promise to Australians, I felt that I kind of separated the articles in terms of how they were representing Telstra, or how they were discussing Andy Penn's position on Telstra's move from the call centres back home, particular with Ray Hadley's talk on 4BC on his radio station in Brisbane, talking to Andy Penn and kind of talking about how in the past, historically, they had fired and lost a lot of jobs for Australians when they closed regional call centres. So there was more to it than just, this wasn't forced against us, as Andy Penn had said in the Today Show article. But with that information, I felt like I probably could have done more research in terms of the outside of what we were given for this assessment, because we were given both the Today Show and the Australian News, or the Daily News Australia from the UK, and then I used the mandatory readings for the definitions for this report. So I really only used one source outside of what we were given, which I thought probably wasn't as good as I could have done. And I'd say probably the biggest misstep for this assessment for me would have been not quite understanding the communication to stakeholders aspect, which was quite a big aspect of the question. And I discussed what they were doing in the case study. I wasn't sure if we should be talking about what we recommend or what was actually communicated to stakeholders. So I did write a bit on that, but I wasn't sure in the end if that's as well as I could have answered the question. And in terms of the conclusion, I always struggle a bit with concluding with these types of questions. But overall, I thought my in-class discussion was quite good. The report was decent, and I'd probably say I'd give myself maybe a 9 out of 14 for a mark, probably around 9 or 10 range for this subject, meeting the standards in a acceptable way, but I'd probably say more so in the sources and really pinpointing those aspects of the question with the stakeholders. So